City of Nashua Planning Board for June 18th, 2020. Linda, can you go ahead and call the roll, please?
Sure. Mayor Donches? Mike Peterson?
Here.
And could you please let me know if there's anybody in the room with you?
No one.
Scott LeClaire?
Here, and I'm alone.
Adam Worley?
Here and by myself.
Ed Weber?
Here by myself.
Alderman David Tenza? Alderwoman Jan Schmidt?
By myself, thank you.
Dan Hudson?
Present and alone.
Maggie Harper? Bob Bollinger?
Here and alone.
Larry Hirsch?
Here and alone.
We have a quorum.
Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and first go through the minutes before I read some of the introductory statements. So we have in front of us, the board does anyway, minutes for the May 21st, May 28th, and June 4th, 2020 minutes. You had those in your packets. I'll start with the May 21st minutes. If anybody on the board had a chance to take a look at these and want to make a motion as to whether or not they're acceptable as submitted or need to be amended.
Mr. Chair? Yes, Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve.
All right, so we have a motion to approve by Mr. Bollinger. Do we have a second on that?
I will second.
Second by Mr. Varley. Any further discussion on that item? Hearing none, can we get a roll vote on that, Linda?
Mike Peterson?
Yes.
Scott LeClaire?
Yes.
Adam Barley?
Yes.
Ed Weber?
Yes.
Dan Schmidt?
Yes.
Dan Hudson?
Yes.
Bob Bollinger?
Yes.
And Larry Hirsch?
Yes.
And that passes 8-0.
Okay, moving on. Now regarding the May 28th, 2020 meeting minutes. Anybody want to make a motion on that?
Mr. Chair?
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Make a motion to approve.
All right, we have a motion to approve the May 28th, 2020 minutes as written. Do we have a second on that?
I will second.
Second by Mr. Varley. Any further discussion on it? I can get a roll vote on this one.
Mike Peterson?
Yes.
Scott LeClaire?
Yes.
Adam Barley?
Yes.
Ed Weber?
Yes.
Dan Schmidt?
Yes.
Dan Hudson?
Yes.
Bob Bollinger?
Yes.
And Larry Hirsch?
Yes.
And that motion passes 8-0.
Okay, thank you. Now we have June 4th, 2020. I'll make a motion. Mr. Bollinger.
Mr. Chair, I'd make a motion to approve.
All right, so we have a motion to approve the June 4th, 2020 minutes by Mr. Bollinger. Do we have a second on that one? Second by Mr. Varley. Do we have any further discussion on that? Let's get a roll vote on that.
Mike Peterson?
Yes.
Scott LeClaire?
Yes.
Adam Barley?
Yes.
Ed Weber?
Yes.
Dan Schmidt?
Yes.
Dan Hudson?
Yes.
Bob Bollinger?
Abstain, Mr. Chair.
And Larry Hirsch.
Yes.
And that motion passes.
All right, and you had that one abstention, Linda, or Bob, okay. Okay, moving on, communications. Doing that, is that you, Linda? Or-
Yes. So Chris had emailed over to you 2 items. The first were some engineering comments from Yola dated June 12th.
Okay,
The second item was some correspondence between Wayne Hudson and Austin Turner dated June 18th, and that's it.
okay, thank you. Moving down the agenda, so report of chairman, committee, and liaison. Ed, do you have anything?
Yes, yesterday, we had a remote meeting. The NRPC had a remote meeting, and they went over the bylaws to bring them up to date. They also needed to update because the National Regional Planning Commission, the cities and towns have now increased to the point where they have to have an metropolitan planning organization. So they had to have language into it so that they could follow the state regulations. They also put out that they want to become a 501c so that they can get more grants and fundings, easier to do. The traffic person that works for NRPC gave a talk and all the upcoming transportation issues that are coming about, and also talked about the Green Meadows over in Hudson, and the Hudson Planning Commissioner did discuss the problems with the traffic report as it stands. So I think there's more to come. Other than that, that's about it. Next week, we're going to have a HDC meeting, so we didn't have anything since then. So next week, HDC.
Got it. Makes sense. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and read the introductory statement of procedures here now. This is Scott Leclerc. Again, I'm the chair of the City National Planning Board. This is the 18th of June, 2020 Planning Board meeting. As the chair of the Planning Board, I find that due to the state of emergency declared by the Governor Sununu as a result of COVID-19 pandemic and in accordance with the Governor's Emergency Order number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. Please note there's no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to this meeting, which is authorized to meet electronically pursuant to the Governor's Emergency Order. However, in accordance with the emergency order, I am confirming that we are, one, providing public access to the meeting by telephone with additional access possibilities by video or other electronic means. We are video conferencing utilizing WebEx through the city's IT department. This electronic meeting, public access to this meeting is also provided via WebEx, and a link to the meeting is contained in the meeting agenda available on the city's website. The meeting is also being streamed through the city's website at www.nashuanh.gov/318/CTV on Nashua's community link. The public may also view this meeting on Comcast channel 16. Number two, providing public notice of necessary information for accessing the meeting. We previously gave public notice to the public of the necessary information for accessing the meeting through public postings and where applicable notice to abutters. Instructions have also been provided on the City of Nashua's website at www.nashuanh.gov and publicly noticed at City Hall. Additionally, a link to the public WebEx access for this meeting is contained in the meeting agenda and available on the city's website. Number three, we're providing a mechanism for the public to alert the public body during the meeting if there are problems with access. If anyone has a problem accessing the meeting, please call 603-589-3115 and they will help you connect. Number four, adjourning the meeting if public is unable to access the meeting. In the event that the public is unable to access this meeting via the methods mentioned above, the meeting will be adjourned and rescheduled. As a chair, I'm in control of this meeting, and to the extent practical and advisable, the board will follow the procedures as identified in our bylaws. First, the applicant will present their case, followed by questions by the board. There will for a rebuttal period as best as possible for persons wishing to speak in favor, or in opposition, or with questions before the board deliberates and we determine an outcome. Applicants and their representatives and individuals required to appear before the board are appearing remotely, and they're not required to be physically present. The applicants, their representatives, and individuals required to appear before the board may contact the planning department to arrange alternative means of real-time participation if they're unable to use WebEx. Real-time public comment can also be addressed via video to the board utilizing the WebEx virtual meeting software for remote access. Note that all votes taken today will be, during this meeting, will all be done by a roll call vote. We will continue to hold these planning board meetings electronically until it's been deemed safe to conduct more typical meetings as scheduled. The board, the planning department, and the city wishes to thank everybody for their understanding and patience during this difficult time. Okay. So moving on with the agenda. Old business, conditional special use permits, there are none. Old business subdivision plans, there are none. Old business site plans, there are none. New business conditional special use permits, there are none. New business subdivision plans, there are none. New business site plans, case number 1, Apple Tree Properties LLC owner, BJ's Wholesale Club applicant. This is an application and acceptance of a proposed amendment to NR 0113 to develop a 400 square foot kiosk supporting a gasoline fueling facility with 6 dispenser islands and associated site improvements. This property is located at 210 Daniel Webster Highway and 101 Adventure Way. So before we get into this, is anybody from the board have a chance to review this application? I want to make a motion as to whether it's ready for us to take jurisdiction.
Weber, so
Mr.
moved.
Weber? Okay, so we have a motion by Mr. Weber to take jurisdiction for this case number 1. We have a second on that.
Second.
Second by Mr. Hirsch. Do we have any further discussion on it? Can we get a roll vote on the taking jurisdiction motion?
Mike Peterson,
Yes.
Scott Leclaire,
Yes.
Adam Barley,
Yes.
Adam Barley,
Yes.
Ed Weber,
Yes.
Jan Schmidt,
Yes.
Dan Hudson,
Yes.
Bob Ballinger,
Yes.
and that motion passes 8-0.
All right, so we have jurisdiction. At this point, do we have somebody from the applicant who would like to present this application?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, name for the record is Gerald Prunier. I'm an attorney with Trafalgar Square in Nashua, New Hampshire, and I'm here alone in my office. The applicant this evening is BJ Wholesale Club and is proposing to build a gasoline station at the intersection of Daniel Webster Highway and Adventure Ave. The proposal is to lots 231 and 167, and then to construct a gasoline station with a 400 square foot kiosk. We will have 6 dispensing islands. With me, you see Matthew Bombassi, who will be our engineer, and will explain the site plan to everyone. Charles was with the our traffic engineer, who will answer any questions the board may have. And George Goff and Marguerite Harrod are both from. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to turn the meeting over to Matt, our engineer, to explain it to the board.
All right, thanks, Mr. Prunier. A couple folks, Bob and Larry, could you guys just mute for the time while they're presenting? Appreciate it. And Jerry, you can mute off too. Thanks. Go ahead, Matt.
Awesome. Good evening. For the record, Matt Bombasi with Bowler Engineering. Before I get started, I'd like to share my screen if possible. Is there a permission that needs to be granted to me to do so, or?
No, go ahead. Yep.
Go ahead.
Okay, my buttons is a little grayed out. Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like they're grayed right now. Can you give them?
There it is. Got it. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks. All right, it's up, Matt.
All right, we got this. All right.
Yeah, we can see it now.
Okay, good. Thanks. And so as Jerry stated, the project's at the corner of Daniel Webster Highway at Adventure Way. I'm sure everyone's familiar with this site. Right now, there's a 2-story retail building here, right real close to Daniel Webster Highway. Just make sure, can you guys see my cursor when I'm moving around? Or
Yes, we can. Yep.
right here along the roadway, it's a very peculiar layout. Under existing conditions, there's a driveway coming right off this intersection here. It has kind of a one-way travel around and parallel parking along the front here. That's caused the stop bars is way back on Adventure Way due to that. There's a few parking spaces here along Adventure Way which actually back out into the road. And there's a separate parking lot to the rear of the building here. It's actually kind of a walkout building to the rear as the topo slopes away from Daniel Webster Highway. The second lot is this, it looks like a gravel area here at the top of the property. When we did soil testing out there, we found a little bit of remains of foundation. I suspect there was a house or something there at one point, but as of right now, it's just kind of a cleared gravel area. The site's in the highway business district. The fueling station use is permitted by right. And it's actually, the site's actually also in the transit-oriented development overlay district, and we provided a site suitability assessment relative to that as part of our review of planning. The proposed site layout is for a 6 dispenser fueling station with actually 12 fueling stations, 6 pumps total. For those unfamiliar with BJ's gas program, it's a one-way circulation, and they do this for efficiency and clarity of movements. So on the right side here of the layout will be a 50-foot wide ingress queue to the fueling stations. Each fueling station is equipped with an extra long hose so it can fuel on either side of the vehicle, and then a one-way out on the opposite side of that. The hours of operation for their stations are typically 6:30 a.m. to 10 p.m. There's no convenience store or any goods sold at the facility. There's a 400 square foot kiosk where there'll be 1 employee there. The only things they would sell out of that is BJ's membership cards. No lottery, no any goods whatsoever other than the cards. The project will have underground storage tanks along the north property line. Those will be permitted with NHDES as part of the underground storage tank permitting process, and that permitting process will be completed subsequent to the planning board process. Fuel deliveries will utilize and pull up on the left side of this. BJ's provides a dedicated lane for their fueling delivery so they don't affect maneuvering through the site. That's the striped area that the vehicles will park here and head out. There's no surprise deliveries. Everything's scheduled and automated, so the kiosk employee, if they need a delivery, will schedule it and be ready for it. The facility is anticipated to be open to the public, although the expectation would be a pretty large number of the consumers at the gas station would be BJ's members. This is a discounted price, but it would be open to everybody. For access and circulation, we essentially redid all the access of the existing site under existing conditions. There was a driveway car cut way up along the intersection here, and then a second one down here. We've located the access as far down Adventure Way, as feasible to provide greatest separation to the intersection. Additionally, we provided a right-out turn onto Daniel Webster Highway for just egress only, for exiting only. That exit driveway serves 2 purposes. One, it provides a relief for right turns onto Daniel Webster Highway from not having to navigate the intersection. Second, when we met with the city preliminarily, the fire department had requested if they could possibly get a second means into the site other than just the Adventure Way driveway. And this being an exit-only driveway, we did design it so that a fire vehicle could turn right in there if there was ever the need to access the site from that direction. Coming up is a very long ingress queue coming in, so it comes up, loops around, and down into the ingress queue. The reason that the driveway is extended in that manner is due to topography on the site. There's about 15 feet of elevation change from Daniel Webster Highway to the Adventure Way driveway down here, so that allows us to mitigate that grading and get up to site. In general, the canopy itself will be about 3 feet below, or I should say the ground below the canopy should be about 3 feet below Daniel Webster Highway at this closest edge, and about 6 or 7 feet below Daniel Webster Highway at the far edge. So a little below the road, but not significantly so. And then the rest of that elevation will be made up through this queue. For parking, that's really the only parking that's anticipated to be required would be for the employee within the kiosk, although we do provide free spaces for the zoning requirement and also an ADA accessible space. They provide a trash enclosure which will be used for the trash bins that'll be located at the fueling stations to empty those out. Typically, the trash is picked up once or twice a week, depending on the use. And they'll also provide a free air machine here. Their preferred way to do that is to provide it as a turn off coming in here. That way, if there is a multiple people that might want to use the free air machine, they can kind of line up, go through and use it. For drainage, there's no real formal drainage infrastructure on this site right now. It kind of all sheet flows to the back and then eventually down towards Adventure Way. We proposed a full drainage design, which has been reviewed by the city. The drainage system includes deep sump hooded catch basins, storm scepter, hydrodynamic separators, kind of a treatment unit, almost like an oil grit type separator with a swirl prior to an infiltration basin, about a 3,000 cubic foot infiltration basin here, which will ultimately overflow for larger storm events out off the site. We did do soil testing out there before the design. Material on site is very sandy and permeable and good for an infiltration system, so that was able to allow us to reduce all peak runoffs for all the storms we analyzed, and also provide increased groundwater recharge compared to existing conditions. While on the note of drainage, we did receive the comments from engineering and Joe. We reviewed them all very thoroughly before this hearing just to make sure we understood them all. Honestly, a lot of good comments, a lot of technical comments, and some questions to answer. Where we feel comfortable, we can address them all. And honestly, many of them are just adding a little extra detail, a little extra notation to the plans. And once we go through them, it would be really no change to what we're looking at here. It's going to be a lot of details as far as, curbing, compaction type notes that the city would require, or like on the plans to clarify construction and things like that. For utilities, it's a minimal utility user. All utilities will be underground. There's only one bathroom in here for the kiosk employee. It's not accessible to the public, so it's one very small water line, one very small sewer line, and about as low as flow as you could be, less than I guess a one-bedroom house, just for that one kiosk employee. They do provide an emergency generator on the site that runs on diesel, and the reason being, if there's a power outage, they want to be able to operate the facility to a certain extent. For landscaping, we designed a landscaping plan to meet the city's requirements and exceed it. It involves a lot of street trees and a lot of ornamental trees around the outside, along with shrub plantings. Under existing conditions, this front of the lot and really all the way down the side until you get to the end of the parking lot, it's not much as far as street landscaping. We're proposing 13 shade or ornamental trees all along the outside and in front of this property, as well as about 50 shrubs kind of mixed in to give it a little bit more even along the frontage. In addition, we'll put some arborvitae trees around the trash enclosure. The trash enclosure is pretty well hidden back here, but just to fully screen it along the backside. For lighting, we've designed it's canopy lighting is how they light the gas station itself. So there's a series of fully recessed lights inside the canopy that shine straight down and light this area. We've also designed pole mounted lights in various locations around the perimeter. When we get to waivers, there is one or two waivers on lighting. One being that the separation to the property line. As lighting designs advance and lighting fixtures advance, there's a lot of different options with the optics inside and the shielding. So what we find is the best way to protect or shield light from abutters is to put the lights so that the backs face the abutting properties. This allows the light can be optically adjusted to shine just towards the site and can also be shielded away from the back. So light more towards the center of the site is going to have some light trespass, where if you put it with its back facing the property boundary, it completely cuts off. So for that reason, we do request a waiver from the light pole setback, but we think it's a design that clearly reduces any impact to surrounding property. For architecture, there's not much of a building. It's just a 400 square foot building. We did meet with staff as part of the initial process, and one thing they did ask for, I believe, was for an increased, I guess, parapet or height to the gas canopy to block any units that might be on the top. There's often fire suppression units and things like that at the top, so it's been raised to block the views of those types of units. We also had a traffic study impact assessment prepared by Vanessa and Associates. Giles Ham is on the meeting if there are any specific questions. That report did assessment of the site and the surrounding intersections. They did have a couple recommendations as part of their report. One of the recommendations was the stop bar at Adventure Way had previously, or under existing conditions, is set quite a bit back on Daniel Webster Highway. The reason being this awkward driveway connection coming into the site. As part of our project, we proposed bringing that up towards Daniel Webster Highway to provide additional queuing along Adventure Way. An additional recommendation was under existing conditions, there's a short area of the road which has two separate lanes, but then it kind of dissipates to one. It's just a minor road widening along the project side of the site, so that we can provide separate left and straight right turn lanes all the way down to our site, just to provide that extra queuing on Adventure Way. The city traffic engineer did review the traffic report and had a few requests of the planning board, and I think some of that email correspondence has been going around even as late as this morning. That the requests they have, and I believe they've been agreed to with Wayne and the city engineer, is they asked for a contribution to future Daniel Webster Highway improvements, just as being part of the corridor. The number that they've used is $200 per peak hour vehicle trip, which in our case is 168 trips, so it would be a $33,600 contribution. We've reached out to applicant and let them know that request, and they said they are amenable to provide that contribution requested by the city. A second request is a traffic counter on the signal here. There's a existing traffic camera, and I think the counter just allows a little extra flexibility for the city with that fixture. The estimate that the city gave was $3 to $4K for that fixture. BJ's has agreed to provide compensate the city $4,000 for that traffic counting fixture. The city asked for a left turn lane study for this left turn movement. We ran that again by the applicant, and they are amenable to paying for that. So what we proposed with the city engineering department is Vanessa and Associates prepare that study, and issue it to the city, but BJ's would be, would pick up the bill, would pay for that service and allow the city to have that report. The fourth and final traffic request of the city engineering department was regarding pedestrian connectivity and pedestrian amenities. This being a gas station, obviously doesn't have a huge pedestrian, I guess, aspect to it, but we did speak with the applicant and they're amenable to assist. I know Austin from our office was on the phone with Dan, I believe, earlier today, and what was discussed is we don't know what form that might take. Again, it's not a ton of pedestrian aspect to this project, so it might not necessarily be appropriate for this, but if while we're doing construction, if there's some pedestrian improvements we can do at this intersection, or perhaps the preference of the city would be for the project to otherwise improve pedestrian connectivity through the city. But I guess regardless having spoken with the city engineer, I think we're comfortable that we can work with the city as to what pedestrian improvements can be made, and we're confident that we'll come to a pretty easy resolution as to whatever the city wants. We can help them out. Again, I'm not sure, having heard the feelings of the board tonight, but should the project be under review tonight for a vote, we'd be amenable to a condition that the project will work with the city engineering department to provide appropriate pedestrian amenities, as a result of this project. We did receive the staff report from planning. A lot of the stuff planning has been working with us over the past more than a month, so we were able to address a lot of their comments prior to the most recent staff report. The one item in there that caught our attention was the a pavement moratorium on Daniel Webster Highway until August 2021. We've been having some preliminary coordination with Joe, and the indication was, or the sense I got, is that we should be able to work it out. He didn't want to get into too many details until we got through the planning process. Typically, there would be a waiver if we were trench patching in Daniel Webster Highway. As the project exists now, we're not proposing any trenching in Daniel Webster Highway at all, except for here along the shoulder. So I suspect that it won't be a great impact at all. Typically, there's concerns about trenching through and then milling and overlaying on either side. But we're happy to work with engineering on the requirements and a possible waiver for the traffic moratorium. I know Fire has reviewed the plans, and I don't believe they had any comments, although we did have a chance to speak with them ahead of time and address some of their access issues prior to submitting. One request they did have is if the project moves forward, if they could use the existing building for training prior to its demolition. And I think that's a pretty common request, and it's a good opportunity for them to provide some training in a facility that's not their design facility. It's an unknown location. I think the project team would be amenable to that. Obviously, some details to be worked out, but we certainly would do everything we could to try to accommodate the fire department if we could provide a training opportunity for them. There are 3 waivers that we're requesting. 2 are related to lighting. Pull up the lighting quick. So the first one is a setback of lighting, and the setback is for lights with lumens greater than 1800, which is basically equivalent to like 2 household light bulbs. And it's an equation. It's the height of the light pole divided by 3 plus 3, I think, is the setback that they require. Again, we could meet that by pushing the lights forward. Just it wouldn't be as good of a design because we wouldn't be able to shield it on the back to light all the areas. We've done a comprehensive lighting plan. The lighting impacts on abutting properties are essentially 0.1 or 0 foot candles around the entire perimeter of the site. So we feel pretty comfortable. There's no light trespass or impacts to abutting properties. But again, we just need to request that waiver so that we can provide the backlit shielded lights along the perimeter of the property. The second waiver request is a 0.2 foot candles at the property line requirement, and honestly, we meet that requirement essentially everywhere that I would feel would be appropriate. I guess the one places we wouldn't meet it would be here, kind of near the driveway entrances, where we do want to provide enough light to light up those egresses and ingresses for cars coming in and out. So we certainly didn't think it was worth not lighting these sufficiently to try to provide no lighting at the roadway where there's already street lighting fixtures, obviously. The third waiver request is relative to the transit-oriented district. There's a maximum 15-foot setback for projects that are kind of applicable under that district. The underlying zoning district has a 20-foot min building setback, and I know there's also setbacks, required for fuel pumps and things like that. The building is set pretty similarly to buildings surrounding it, and I think appropriately to allow circulation. You certainly wouldn't want a fueling canopy, in close proximity to the property line where it can't be circulated in or out. Again, we felt that was a reasonable waiver request, but it is something that planning did ask us to formally request. I believe that would do it, at least for initially, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that the board has regarding the proposal.
Okay, thanks. So I've got a couple here. Can you mentioned the extension of the parapet to block the fire suppression tanks and equipment. So I think that's a pretty important item. I'm glad the city brought it up.
Yep.
Did the sight lines from Daniel Webster, have they been taken into account for that though? I think this is lower, right? So you're going to be driving by and looking down. So
Sure.
what kind
So,
of accommodations are being made to sort of clean up that visual, because it is kind of messy on top of the canopies?
yeah, so the canopy is 14 feet high. The ground surface here would be 3 feet lower than Daniel Webster Highway. So the bottom of the canopy would be, my math is correct, 11 feet higher than Daniel Webster Highway, and then the top of that parapet would be 3 feet higher than that, so 14 feet higher than the road. So I think much higher than would be the visual eye, I guess, to look over the top of it.
On both ends of it, or?
Yeah, and on this end it would be less than that. So if it would be 14, it would be about 7 feet higher than Daniel Webster Highway at that location.
That would be the parapet or the top of the canopy?
The top of the parapet, or the top of the canopy parapet.
Yeah, so 7 feet.
Yep.
So that's close, I think. So, if you were that, you remember you're gonna have a lot of people coming down the hill from up towards like the other commercial area too, which are gonna be looking down as well. So that's, that grade keeps going up as you cross Daniel Webster. So I guess maybe what I'd ask is there can be some accommodations with the design to sort of move some of the equipment maybe more towards the front and, tighter to the parapet, at least the suppression tanks and stuff, so that they're not sort of all over the place up there. So
Okay. Yeah.
I think there's a way to do that in the design and not have to really change it in much of what you're doing. So, but I'm sensitive to that. So, and likewise on the underside of the canopy, the suppression concept, we see the gamut from capped suppression nozzles that are 6 inches long or whatever, to like an island of galvanized pipe all over the place. Can you explain what the concept of the design is?
Yeah, sure, I will. And the fire suppression engineer is on the meeting, and I'll just ask him to chime in if I'm saying it incorrectly. But I believe my understanding is that the canisters are on top of the canopy and out of view behind that parapet, and there would be the 6-inch nozzles coming down, at various locations within the canopy. So I'm obviously in the configurations you're talking about with the canisters all wrapped all around the pylons.
Yeah. Okay. So that's accurate. If the engineer wants to speak, that would be. I'm fine with that. You want to jump on?
RB, did you want to just confirm that I said that right?
Yeah, hi, this is Ronald Lawrence from Stantec in Auburn, New Hampshire.
Mhm.
I'm the fuel system engineer on the project. As it turns out, fire suppression will only be provided here if required. But that is correct. The fire suppression nozzles stick below and can be covered as described.
Okay. Excellent. While you're on, can you talk about the tank venting? Like where's the vent extensions? Are they right there on the edge by the tanks?
Yeah, the vents will be as proximate to the tanks as we can put them, usually on a riser combined with the overfill alarm. So, just behind the tanks there in that landscaped area, presumably, the vents will be about 12 feet high.
Yep. Okay. That's the general area of them right there. Yep. Okay. The other question I had, I'll move on to the board here for sure. The ingress and egress of the site on Adventure Way, it looks to be configured to me to be sort of assuming you're not going to have left turn traffic out of that curb cut very frequently. And while I think that's probably obviously the case now, we do have development desires and for the back half, what would be planned north of here, that I think could change that over time. So hopefully we'll change that over time. Let's put it that way. Can you explain to me if you think that, I see you have it sort of, turned off versus a perpendicular curb cut. And can you just explain whether you think that's the right approach if that development in the back ever does come to fruition?
Yeah, sure. So we designed, our expectation, is that the majority of traffic will be coming in this way and out that way. That is why we laid it out that way. And also we look often at the truck maneuvers and make sure that, trucks coming in or the fueling aren't going to impact the exit lane. That said, we could straighten it out and allow that, I guess, or extend this double yellow through so that the left turns are easier. But again, our expectation was that the traffic was going, primarily towards DW Highway, but their curb cut, we believe, is wide enough and with enough radii that if left turn maneuvers are needed out of here, that they could be executed.
Be restrained, whatever. Yeah, I don't know what the time framing is, but you're confident that if that becomes a frequent maneuver, that it's really just a restriping exercise to kind of square that away.
Yep. Yeah. The driveway is the driveway radii provided are pretty large, and not because of consumer vehicles, because we want to make sure we're getting fuel delivery vehicles and the fire egress vehicles in and out safely. So the curb cuts, inherently a little bigger than would be required for a passenger car. So I feel pretty comfortable that that we could accommodate that without adjusting the geometry of the curving.
Yeah, it's obviously not really necessary at the moment, but this. And then just the last question I have is there diesel fuel intended delivery here or dispensing intended?
Yep.
And can you point it out and talk to me about the what kind of provisions? A lot of times the diesel receiving vehicles are considerably larger, right? And then a lot of trucks and landscape trucks and things like that would be coming through. So talk a little bit about how you plan to make that convenient and not get in the way of the other dispensing.
Sure. So four dispensers on the site will be just regular unleaded, and then there will be 2 dispensers that will be unleaded and also have a diesel component to them. So there will be 4 dedicated just unleaded proposals. There's dispensers. There's a 50-foot queue here. So I guess I'm trying to envision your scenario of a truck, maybe with even like a trailer with lawnmowers on it or something like that.
Yeah, we'll see that all the time.
Yep. There's this is 24 feet for the canopy, and then there's another 50 feet behind that. So even with a 12-foot aisle to get around the back of it, you have like 50 or 60 feet of length for the truck. So I think that we're pretty comfortable.
Well, I'm thinking is maybe that first island though might be very complicated to maneuver a trailered vehicle. If it was the islands further down the page.
Yep, I would agree with you, and I think these 2 dispensers would be the most appropriate for the diesel. Okay.
Yeah, I think if you just keep that in mind, we've seen a few where it's the top ones, and you end up with a trailer kind of trying to do a 3-point turn there. So, yeah. Okay, monopolizing the time here a little bit. Can from the board, anybody just speak out because I don't have view of all of you. So.
Mr. Chair, this is Mr. Bollinger.
Go ahead, Mr. Bollinger.
Yes, if you would indulge me, Mr. Chair, I do have a couple of questions. Thank you. Mr. Bombassi, I hope I pronounced your name correctly. I apologize if I didn't. So,
if you said it right, you'd be the first. So don't worry.
I guess the first question is just more of a general curiosity question. Was there any consideration given to siting this closer to the main BJ's site at 8 Sexton Drive? That's almost an 8-acre parcel. I know Lowe's owns the parcel to the south, which is about 14 acres. I just didn't know, just generally speaking, if there had been any consideration just for convenience of customers to siting it closer to the main BJ's facility.
Yeah, sure. So I think that the BJ's preference would be as you stated, if in a perfect world. I think the Nashua zoning bylaw has a provision regarding gas stations being located more than 750 feet from another station or a parcel that has a gas station more than 750 feet. I know there's a Company Farms in pretty close proximity to that BJ's facility. So I think this was just an available site that allowed it under zoning.
No, that's okay. Thank you for clarifying that. I appreciate it. My next question, I believe you addressed this earlier, but I did just want to confirm you don't necessarily need a BJ's membership. I imagine there's going to be two price tiers, one for members and one for non-members, but it is open to the general public. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, I think it's a 5-cent discount for BJ's members per gallon.
Okay. Very good. I think next, more of a technical question. Looking at your site plan, I guess maybe the ingress egress, if you followed into the site, I guess I would go immediately east of the easternmost fueling position. We got half scale plans, but it looks like perhaps two-way traffic is permitted there, but there's like a one-way ingress. Yes, I think you're hovering. That scales off at about 15 feet. Is that appropriate for two-way traffic? Because it looks like individual drivers will be able to either come in or come out via that small paved area. I just wanted to address the throat width there.
Sure. I mean, we could make the throw width wider. It is expected to be one-way traffic, so consumers would come in, they'd wrap around and come in this way, then they come out this way. They would leave this way out Adventure Way if they want to take a left. They would come out this way and take a right on Daniel Webster Highway. So this would only be one way going this way around to the side of the kiosk.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification. Next question. There did appear as recently as today, if I read the correspondence correctly, there is intended to be an analysis of the southbound left turn queue from Daniel Webster Highway.
Yep.
Are you or anyone on the team able to elaborate on anything regarding that right now, or is that basically an effort to be undertaken regarding the adequacy of southbound left turn storage?
Sure. So I can speak to the agreements and some of the stuff that went around today. I know as one of the conditions or one of the requests of the city engineering department regarding the project is they just requested that BJ's provide a study of that left turning so the city could have it in the record. So it was agreed upon with the city engineer was that BJ's would at their expense would hire a traffic engineer, presumably Vanass and Associates, to do that left turn study for the city. The Vanass would issue it to the city, and then the city would have that regarding, for future references. They take a look at how they're going to improve really the whole Daniel Webster Highway corridor.
Okay, thank you. And I just have one additional question. In some of the correspondences, and I'm just not sure if this is a typo or me misinterpreting, there seems to be some reference to the Amherst Street corridor account versus the Daniel Webster Highway corridor account. And I just need to understand what fund would be contributed to. Amherst Street is obviously not Daniel Webster Highway.
If I can, Mr. Chairman, that was a mistake by Wayne.
Just state your name, Jerry, real quick.
And he asked Linda to try to fix that back to Daniel Webster Highway. That was a mistype by Wayne.
Okay. Jerry, just to clarify, that was Jerry Prunier talking. It's a typo, Jerry?
Yeah, this is,
Okay.
If you follow, when I received a copy of it from Linda, if you follow it down to the bottom, the last thing by Wayne was, when he read it, is change Amherst Street to Daniel Webster Highway.
Got it. That's okay. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Well-
Other members of the board or
Well-
Matthew, did you have something to say?
Nope.
Okay,
Weber?
go ahead, Mr. Weber.
Yes, couple of things. Are the, see, the transformer, is that protected by bollards?
It will be. And again, the transformer, we've shown a location for it, which we feel is appropriate. But to be honest, the electric company does what they want. So they're going to tell us where to put it when it comes down to them doing the design. But yes, it will be protected by bollards.
And the generator?
And the generator as well. Yep.
Okay. Let's see. On the egress from onto Daniel Webster Highway, are you planning on putting do not enter signs and right turn only signs there?
Yes, I know for sure we have do not enter signs and stop signs here. I believe we have right turn only signs as well. I have to double check, but of course we'd be amenable.
Okay. And also that arrow that would be on the pavement, that needs to be high temperature paint so that it doesn't wear out, because there's going to be a high traffic from the gas station.
Sure.
Okay. Lastly, is there any provision down on Adventure Way, the entrance and exit for water, stormwater shed? All that water is going to be hitting that pavement, and because it's got a real good slope, is going to be washing all of that water out into Adventure Way, and that could become a hazardous, especially in the wintertime where we have freezing cold, and sometimes, you know, it gets warm and then it gets cold and you have an ice, especially ice. And so you could have a real ice shed there and a hazardous situation. But right now, is there any provision to collect that water at the bottom, or is it just going to run down on the Adventure Way and flood the rest of the way if it's really like a 10-year storm?
No, there is a provision. So we provided a catch basin. It's a little hard to tell in this colored rendering right here at the end of the driveway. So what that'll get, the amount that gets sheet flowed out to Adventure Way is really this small triangle right here. Everything from this driveway up will get collected into that catch basin and into the subsurface drainage infrastructure.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's all I have.
Other board members? I just had a question about hours. Maybe I missed it. Is this 24/7 or is it?
6 a.m. to 10 p.m.
6 a.m. to 10 p.m.
6:30 a.m. to 10 p.m.
Okay. All right. And can you just be a little more clear on the signage?
Yep, sure. So that there'll be some BJ's Gas branding, you know, along the canopy, very minimal, painted on. There'll also propose to be a pylon sign here at the intersection that'll have some small LED pricing pictures on it as well. I think that the intention is that signage is, you know, just going to be within the zoning ordinance requirements, nothing greater than what the zoning would allow regarding setback or size or height.
Okay. All right. Any other board questions? Maybe Matt, if you could stop sharing your screen, I can see the board members.
Yeah.
Thanks. I'm looking for Mr. Peterson. Yep. You're set. You're on mute. Sorry. Looks like we don't have any other questions at the moment from the board. Okay. At this point, then, I will go ahead and open up the floor to any of the other attendees that may be on the line. And if you have a question, go ahead and just make sure you unmute yourself, state your name and address for the record. And then when I call on you, you can go ahead and give your questions. Anyone out there?
Hi, can you hear me?
I can, yep.
Hi, Scott. This is Rob Parsons of 11 Gilboa Lane in Nashua.
Okay.
I'm the owner of 2 East Bitbrook the parcel to the rear, known formally as the Hampshire Chemical parcel.
Mhm.
And we would just want to speak to a couple issues, if I may.
Yep, sure. Go ahead.
You did mention earlier, if it were to be developed, and we, as you know, we're fully intending on developing that, and we've been working on it quite readily. There have been some issues with the site that have, over the years, with Hampshire Chemical. The main issue that we have in trying to redevelop the site is drainage. It's been a very major issue for us. It's been ignored by boards of the past, and a lot of the butters have been allowed to topically drain onto our site, and we've been left to handle the drainage. And I think everyone on this board is aware of that at some level. We've been working diligently for the last 2 years we've owned it to try and develop a plan to mitigate the drainage issues that we've been left with, as well as developing it while we're developing it redeveloping it in the best possible fashion. With that being said, we just want special concern to be looked at from the drainage aspect of the site. Second to that,
okay,
but we entrust that you will. Second to that, this applicant's mentioned the TOD several times, and they're applying themselves to the TOD, Transit-Oriented Development. In order to utilize the TOD, there's a study that would need to be looked at as to how the development benefits the TOD for modal transportation. I don't know how this development would do such. So I just raised that question. And lastly, I just want to understand how the increased traffic to this site and how its access and whatnot will impact the future development. I want the board to consider future development to the extent that it can, because understanding that we have a very large parcel that's been in planning and from our end, and we've been in discussions with the city for quite some time as to how to best develop it. And the city has come back to us and asked that we, come forth and present something that looks at the entirety of our 3 lots that we have to the rear, common ownership. That being said, it's taking quite some time. We can't be as nimble as a 1 acre applicant on the Daniel Webster corridor, such as this applicant. And I just don't want to be impacted because we aren't able to be nimble, as we have been very forthright in trying to develop the site and bring it to market, and to be adversely impacted by not looking at what might happen to the rear or what's being planned for the rear as this gets approved. I just want the board to take that into consideration to the extent that it can. All right, and that's really all I have to say.
Okay. Thanks, Rob.
Thank you.
So what we try to do is collect the questions. I assume Matt or one of your folks is keeping track of the questions here, right? And I wrote down some of them as well, and I'll collect a few of them and then have the applicant respond. Thanks.
Yes, we'll answer.
Great. Is there anyone else wishing to speak in opposition, concern, or have a question that they'd like the applicant to address? Not hearing any or seeing any hands up. Linda, you seeing any hands?
I do not.
Okay. All right. So hearing none, I'll turn it back over to the applicant. And I would say the 3 items that that I think we want to hear more, and that the gentleman indicated was drainage, specifically with impact to the lower area development, the TOD and the study benefits, and then the traffic impact that would be, as it relates to future development, best you know it from your traffic study. Okay, go ahead.
I'm Gerald Prunier. As to drainage, I think I will let try a little bit more, as I don't have my engineering degree yet. I'm working. But as far as drainage is concerned, we understand we can't take any more water off our site than was previously done undeveloped. And it has to be accounted for. And I believe we've accounted for that with the city engineer, but I'll let talk a little bit more about that. I'll let him talk about the TOD and traffic to the site. We've had a traffic report. I'm sure the city would have wanted to make sure that it complied with all surrounding properties. And we are making contributions to help all those surrounding properties in our that we're making to the traffic study. With that, I'll, if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman, I'll let Matt go make more detail.
Sure. Okay. Thanks. Just go ahead and mute Jerry. Matt, go ahead.
So yeah, so sure. So for drainage, like I kind of previously outlined, we're required to analyze various storm events, the 2, 10, 25, 50-year storm events. We do have soils on site that are well suited to provide infiltration, so we were able to provide decreases for all storm events we've analyzed in comparison to existing conditions. We did have the review from Joe. There were some minor comments and details that we'd be happy to iron out with him. But I think in general, we could certainly characterize Joe's review as very thorough. While we agree with the comments, we thought it was a good review. It was very, very thorough. So I think our report was comprehensive, and I think the city's reviewed it very thoroughly as well.
Am I correct in assuming, or in my understanding, that all of the stormwater that's generated on the site, you are, containing it and infiltrating it, with the exception of the storms that are not required to be, per se, by guideline?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, inherently, is when we have these good sandy soils, the lower storms, we have to completely detain and infiltrate. So I'd say, up to at least a 2-year storm, we're completely holding and infiltrating. The larger storm events, the 1 in 25 year, those kinds of storm events will have an overflow device that'll discharge out to the city infrastructure. But certainly your typical everyday storm up into really the 2-year storm event will completely infiltrate.
When you say discharge to the city infrastructure, so does Adventure Way have a storm drain?
It does, yep.
Okay. Is it combined or is it separated?
Goes
It's
to my-
separated.
Separated. Okay. So,
Does that not then discharge over my land?
go ahead. I'll let you respond to that. Can you just clear? I'll ask the question. So do you have an understanding of where the discharge from Adventure Way's storm drain system ends up?
It heads in that direction down Adventure Way. I know Joe, I believe, had headed out there to try to verify where that pipe discharged, and I don't think he was able to locate it. For our particular site, really our standard is to reduce the flow coming off of our site in comparison to existing conditions, which is what we have done.
Okay. Can you speak to the question regarding the TOD?
Sure. So we provided a pretty thorough site suitability analysis that was submitted to staff regarding the analysis on, again, traffic, parking, economics, appearance, aesthetics. I believe that was reviewed by staff, and we had no comments on that. The facility is pretty similar to the uses around it, cited pretty similarly. It's going to provide quite a bit of landscaping. So we don't need any of the TOD provisions. There's provisions there that allow the planning board to relax requirements. If you're in the TOD district, we're really applying under the highway business district, but we did provide that site suitability analysis as requested by planning and feel the project meets those standards.
So in my understanding from what you said, clear that you're actually not using any of the TOD benefits. You're not using any of those for this application.
Correct. Yep.
Okay. Can you talk about the traffic analysis that you've done? Obviously analyze your own, but beyond your own in and out traffic onto Adventure Way and Daniel Webster, the additional traffic work you're doing is essentially the queuing study on Daniel Webster with regard to the left turn lane?
The additional work that we're doing.
Or your funding, I should say. Because, yeah.
So we're funding more than that. We're going to provide on Adventure Way, we're going to move the stop bar closer to the intersection. We're also going to provide the 2 lanes going all the way down Adventure Way, with a slight road widening to add to that queuing. And through the correspondence today, it's the study of the left turn lanes is a $33,600 benefit to the city from BJ's for future traffic appointment improvements as agreed to with the traffic engineer, and also a traffic counter attached to the traffic signal, which I think is about a $4,000 improvement.
Okay. And maybe Dan, you can answer. So this study for the left turn lane, I mean, this has come up a few times to this board, frankly. And that is that going to essentially serve as a baseline study for future traffic reports to build off of as they develop further down Adventure Way?
Sure. So this is Dan Hudson, city engineer. We recognize that there's an issue with that left turn lane, as you mentioned, been discussed before. The existing storage really isn't sufficient currently, and BJ's isn't gonna, make that any better. They did their analysis. We didn't see the queuing information in the study, so we've asked them to provide that. What we are planning is, to extend that left turn lane. But the road's in moratorium currently. It's, when we extend it to accommodate future development to the back as well. So it's a more extensive project than we felt it was warranted to have BJ's do. So that's why we're asking for the contribution towards what we envision would be, future left turn lane extension treatment. We're working on a concept for that. And that's something that we hope to accomplish in the future.
Okay. And
the study is to clarify some information that just wasn't in the study, but we already know what the results are going to be, or have a good idea. We just want to document that, and that's the basis for the contribution we asked for.
Okay. And then, do you have any further information regarding the storm drain system at this time that is on Adventure Way, or is that something that's not known on the city side, at least in this meeting?
Well, I don't have particular knowledge about the Adventure Way drainage. I do know it's downhill to the property in the back. The drainage that's there has probably been that way a long time. Having said that, I've been working with the engineers for the development in the back that's proposed or in the conceptual phase, I'd say. And there are drainage issues on that site, and we are working with them to try to find ways to address them in a collaborative fashion. So, I'm hopeful. It's good that BJ's is not going to exacerbate any issue that exists today. It's going to be the reverse, and we'll continue to work with all applicants as they come forward to try to address issues.
Okay, so it's your opinion that the application is not exacerbating the current situation, it's improving, but maybe.
Yeah, it's highly impervious site currently, and it will be when they're done. But they are doing infiltration, probably to a greater extent than what exists. So yeah, I mean, their analysis shows that the site is reduced.
Okay. At this point,
May
yeah, let me go to Mr. Weber from the board.
May I speak?
I will come back to you. Yeah, you do have another. Yeah. But let me get the board in.
Yeah,
Mr.
thank
Weber?
you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, on one of the issues, I would like to see if the applicant would, when he's all done finishing the place up, the pavement's down, blacktop's down and everything, would he test that rear drainage with a water test showing the water going down past, and that it is collecting, that it's collecting and it isn't going on to the person's property. It's one of the big things that we look at here. We do not want any of the water coming off of one property and going onto the other. So would you be amenable to test that drain with water coming down, a lot of water coming down that driveway, the inlet outlet driveway coming from the top, raining and flowing down, and to make sure that that is collecting all that water and the water is not going onto the other person's property?
Matt, you're on mute.
Well, thank you. So I understand the question. Would we be willing to verify that the water coming down the driveway is indeed collecting in that catch basin that I talked about earlier at the base of the driveway instead of bypassing it and going down Venture Way?
That is correct. Yes.
Yeah, if that's the case, I think, yeah, we're willing to. I'm not sure. I think that the test is honestly probably just an eye test to see where the water is going, because you can see it flowing down the driveway. But sure, we'd be willing to confirm that the project was constructed as designed for the water flowing in.
Yeah, and then just send a report to engineering and and to planning staff that this did happen, and this is what the results are. Thank you.
Okay, before I get to any of the I think Mr. Parsons has something else that he wants to say. Is there any other questions of the board of the applicant from the first set of questions? Okay, I'm not seeing any. Mr. Parsons, did we have one more opportunity here for you to ask any questions of the rebuttal? So.
Sure. Thanks, Mr. Claire. It's with all due respect to Dan Hudson, he said that the majority of the lot is impervious as it is now. The second lot behind the white two-story structure is actually a former house lot, and it's a vacant house lot. The last use of that property was a residential structure, and that abuts my property where there is a culvert, a drainage culvert on my land, and that's not impervious right now. It's just basically, since the house was level, it's been a field. So I don't know. I do know that they're going to collect groundwater, and it's going to head down Adventure Way, and it's ultimately going to pass through my property. I just want to fully understand it isn't all impervious. That's not a correct statement, and I just want to understand. I think the board needs to look at how it's going to be utilized, because we've been impacted pretty heavily by all the development up. We are at the low point of that geographically. And we just want to make sure that we're not impacted further beyond what we've already been impacted because of decisions in the past, not made by this board, but made by boards of the past. So I just want to express that again.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
And Scott, the last thing, the site suitability for the TOD. I didn't see it. I trust that the city did. There was no objections to it. I'm just curious as to how it benefited the modal development within the TOD, what was presented. But as you said, they are not using any of the TOD overlay benefits. So that's
I think it's my understanding the city asked for that, but I'll have the applicant come actually respond. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Scott. Take care.
All right. So the applicant, I give you one more chance to address drainage. Still seems to be a little bit of a question. And can you just clarify on the TOD, what was the genesis of it, I guess, and what if there was any results that were specific to the intermodal development?
So sure. Regarding the drainage, we did a full hydrologic study. We would have considered the existing condition of all the surfaces on the site, and would have taken a conservative assumption. So where there's a cleared field, that I know that's been used as a gravel turnaround area, we would have considered a grass to be conservative. We've got a designed peak flow off of the site in volume, for that matter, below existing conditions. I know that's been reviewed to the city, so we're amenable to. Our report shows that we're reducing the flows, and B, if there's any comments, remaining comments from Joe, we're happy to address them as part of this. And EOD, again, we're not,
Just to clarify that, Matt, sorry to interrupt you. So that the site that the butter indicated was a house lot, you modeled that as a sort of a grass site.
impervious. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
And then regarding the TOD, we aren't, again, not using any of the benefits to that or some of the leeways that the board has. We're completely compliant under zoning, under the underlying zoning district. Planning did ask us to provide a site suitability report, which we did, and that was done under section 9426.1, I think. So it was under those criteria, that specific criteria that was mentioned. I don't believe is in that section unless I'm missing it. But we did provide, I guess, detailed narratives on all the different aspects of the overlay district that we were required to address.
Okay. But off the top of your head, you don't know what benefits to the modal development this particular application has as that came out of that study?
Sure, I can only just address, I guess, how the project fits in with the surrounding area. I know there's a significant increase in landscaping and improvement to improvement to stormwater. It fixes a lot of existing traffic conditions that are less than ideal. I'm coming through, so we feel the project's an improvement overall. Again, it's not truly a true mixed development as we might typically see for a transit-oriented district, but we believe it fits into the surrounding area and it's an improvement.
Okay. Mr. Varley, did you have a comment or a question?
Yeah, I did. I guess sort of a question / clarification. So this relates in part to, I think, the comments from the butter, as well as the request of Mr. Weber. I just want to clarify. I mean, I think, Matt, what we've been discussing in terms of the drainage and the impact is that, you've used conservative calculations in determining, what the runoff would be in the different storm events. And what you're saying is that the impact as it exists today will be less after the redevelopment. But that's not to say that there's going to be zero impact on the abutting site, because there is obviously, currently runoff, as was discussed by the abutter. So I just wanted to clarify, it's a reduced impact, but that doesn't mean that there will be zero impact in, particularly in a more severe storm.
Yeah, sure. I guess I would define impact as an increase or making it greater or worse. So to me, that zero impact, we're reducing it all. I mean, naturally, the topography down to Adventure Way, we go southerly, so the Adventure Way drainage infrastructure heads that way. It sounds like he has a fairly complicated drainage situation going on his property, and certainly our 1 acre parcel isn't going to fix that. What we can do is our part in providing improvement for our condition.
Right, understood. Yeah, I didn't want there to be a misperception that this was somehow that it was that it was eliminating the existing condition altogether. So I agree. As you said, if you define impact as not increasing, but in fact decreasing. I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions from the board for staff or the applicant? None at this time. Yes, I just have one more. I don't know, Linda, if you can you shed any more light on the TOD, you or Dan, and what the reason for them having, doing the study and the results of it?
So under 190.26.1D2 requires that any site plan submitted to the planning board that's located in a TOD has to supply a site plan suitability report. So that's just a requirement. And the applicant is also correct. They're not seeking any kind of relief under the TOD. Sometimes somebody will ask for like less parking or, something like that in a TOD, but in this case, they're not. They're following the HB. So, but it is a requirement in our ordinance that they do submit the site plan suitability report. And you should have a copy of that in your package.
Yeah, I was just trying to make sure we were, so essentially the applicant needed to do that to meet our requirement. And,
Correct.
and then that was it. And so, all right, appreciate that.
Scott?
Mr. Parsons, yeah, we're kind
Yeah.
of moving into the next phase. I can give you maybe one more shot.
All right, this
Yeah.
is my last comment, thank you for that. I understand that now, even though they've mentioned TOD several times, that they're not actually utilizing any relief from the TOD, but they are in the overlay. And what I'm asking is that we're in the overlay. We've given great consideration to the concept of transit-oriented development, utilizing the rail in our development. We've had conversations with the city about that. And since they are in the overlay, despite the fact that they're not using relief from the overlay as the TOD, I would like the board to look at it, how it would impact the ability to develop the TOD, because it is the intention of the TOD was to develop in a transit-oriented development manner. And if this doesn't contribute to it, and in fact negates it, it could be impactful to the overlay district, which was put in place to utilize the transit-oriented development. So in other words, if we put an overlay in place to try and effectuate a transit-oriented development, and this is in that overlay and it doesn't benefit the transit-oriented development and may in fact impact the ability to develop a 40-acre parcel that is giving consideration to transit-oriented development, I think the board should give consideration to the TOD, not that they're not utilizing the benefits it has, but what this site development may impact that doesn't benefit and may in fact impact negatively the ultimate use of the TOD. So how does this benefit the TOD or does it negate it? That's my comment for the board.
Okay, I appreciate that, and I think the board can talk about that amongst ourselves in the meeting. So.
Mr. Chairman, can I make one statement since Mr. Parsons has had 4 times? I just want to make the statement that this is a public the record. They could have absolved it before and made any comments they wanted except for tonight. However, we have complied with the city regulations regarding our site plan. We have met those. Whether they're going to get 40-acre piece of property, I have no idea. Nor are we to do anything outside of making sure we don't injure their property by the drainage particularly. So if this, we just don't feel that we are in any way impacting their plan in any fashion. I just want to make a statement because of what Mr. Parsons said. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. All right, at this point, getting close to closing the hearing portion, but I will leave the board, obviously. If there are any questions that you want to ask of staff or the applicant, Mr. Weber?
Yeah, it's number 6, date.
Should be June 12th. At number 7, we should change the date to June 18th.
Okay. Any other questions from the board? Okay. All right. So hearing no further questions of the board in the hearing, I'm going to go ahead and close the hearing and move into the public meeting. So, so we have in front of us the development, obviously, at sort of on that Adventure Way and Daniel Webster Highway. My own kind of opinions of things here. I do think that it's a quite an improvement from what's there currently. I think if anybody's driven by there, I would agree with the applicant that this sort of ingress and egress of the existing site is kind of a disaster. It's essentially a free-for-all right there at that corner. So I'm personally very interested in the development of this corner to straighten that out, for starters. And I do think that the layout of the site seems to work. You know, they've addressed most of my questions. You know, I think, you know, I'll just put my own opinion on this particular application with regard to transit-oriented districts. I actually think a gas station that's close to where you might park for a rail or something someday is a good idea. So that's my 2 cents on that. But I'm definitely interested at hearing from the board and what their comments are. And Mr. Varley?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, so I in general, I agree with you. I think the development is an improvement for purposes of the site. And, you know, on the TOD issue in particular, I mean, I think at worst, it's neutral. I mean, where this is a redevelopment, you know, it's not as if this is a currently, you know, a new development on previously unused land. So it seems to be at worst, it's neutral. It certainly doesn't, in my view, negatively impact, you know, the possibility for, you know, developing rail, for example, in connection with the other site. So I would agree with you there. And, you know, in addition, you know, the abutters' other main concern obviously being drainage. I think we discussed that at length, and it seems pretty clear to me that the applicant has, you know, created an effective drainage plan, and one that, you know, has a net reduction in terms of the outflows from the site, which will ultimately, you know, be of benefit to the abutter. So, as I said, I think it's a good design overall, and I'm supportive of it.
Other board members? Bollinger?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I generally agree with your assessment and with that of Mr. Varley. My primary concern is really the southbound left turn lane queue issue. I think honestly for the better part of 4 decades now, traffic engineers have been trying to figure out the whole DW Spitbrook corridor and what to do with that. My only real question to the board, is it wise to vote on this as is tonight, or should we at least see what the queuing study has to say? Some real rough calculations based on the city's GIS website. It's only about 100-foot right away. You have private property to the east on Daniel Webster Highway, and to the west you have not just city-owned property, but you have a historic cemetery. And in between Daniel Webster Highway, the median is, you know, over the years, I'm sure it came to this, it's some little odd configuration of maybe only an 8 or 9 foot width concrete, and then it transitions to asphalt median. So I don't know who could actually ameliorate this situation, but I guess my primary concern would be if the expectation is, and I don't want to presuppose things that I don't know, if this site exacerbates that southbound left turn queue issue, how badly does it exacerbate it? Should the board have some knowledge of the greater traffic impact related to queuing before we make a decision? And if that means potentially tabling this application, you know, a meeting or so, would it be wise at least to have that knowledge in our pocket? Because if this were approved tonight, I don't think we necessarily get a second bite at the apple. And that's my primary concern, Mr. Chair, and I'll yield back to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Yeah, I think, you know, we've seen several site plans come up along this corridor since I've been on the board, which has been a while, but this is one of the first ones I've seen that actually is investing in looking at that, at least. So I'll give them credit for that. You know, and I know that the city has been looking at this for quite some time. But I don't know, you know, I'm not sure if the queuing is exacerbated. I mean, I think the intent by the city is to is to do something with that in the future anyway. And my expectation, and maybe Mr. Hudson can speak on it, is any future development is really going to drive the final solution more than this application. So let's say this application requires 2 more cars in the queue. I don't think the city's going to address that until they figure out what's going on with the other development, because that might be 10 more or 20 more. You know what I mean? So I don't think the city's going to do it 2 times. Kind of what I'm getting at. But Dan, I don't know. Maybe you can speak to that. Is that
Sure. Yeah.
is that right?
You both have characterized my thought process on this over the last week or so. You know, as I said earlier, we do know there's an issue there. You know it from previous applications. We do need to do something there. I do believe, you know, and to the rear is gonna expirate the issue. So yeah, although we could require BJ's to, you know, address their issue by extending it some to address their development. What we've kind of come to is taking a contribution instead towards a future project, which would be much more expansive, I think. That's the approach we've taken. You know, if the board would rather take a different approach and table it and get the results and, you know, decide, you know, if they feel that what we're asking for towards a contribution is fair or not, then that's certainly the board's discretion. And that's really the decision at hand.
Okay, thanks. Mr. Weber?
Thank you. Can this would this problem also be taken care of with number 7, that the planning department can do something, or when would the study be performed? Would it be performed before the building permit is issued, or no?
Well, yeah, I think the study, I think in this arrangement, and Linda, you can correct me if I'm wrong, we're in what Dan indicated is we're taking a contribution in lieu of a change to the street. So we're getting the study at least out of this application, which is going to help us go down the road in the future. I'm not sure myself what waiting for the study does, if there's going to be no, you know, if we're not going to require the applicant to implement the result of the study, right? So if we're just delaying it to get the study done, and then we're going to get the study and say, okay, well, we recognize it's only, you know, it's X amount worse, but we don't think it makes sense to require the applicant to actually change that left turn lane now, because we're probably going to do it again.
Yeah.
That's where I'm at, is I'm not sure it makes sense to delay.
Yeah.
Knowing that we may not require that. So.
Yeah, I really, one I would ask Dan is, if this study did, what would the city be doing with it? Would the BJ's really does he feel that it would really do a bad thing, or does he think that it's just a matter of a cosmetic thing that the city has to do with the street?
I can't speak to it directly because I don't have the information. That's one of the reasons we asked for the study. All we know is we have the turning movement counts, and I believe that left turn, about 20 vehicles during a peak hour are getting added, and the applicant's, you know, traffic engineer could speak to this probably better than I could. You know, it's probably adding, you know, 30 to 40% more to that left turn, maybe. I don't know. We have to look at those volumes. I know Joe Mendola looked at it, but we we really don't have those results from that study to indicate how bad it is right now or how bad it would be under the proposed. And the reason is bounded by that turn lane, and analysis needs to be done as if we had a turn lane that was, 1,000 feet long to determine, what would the queuing be, and then under both scenarios. And we just don't have that information at the present time.
Okay, Mr. Varley, and I'll get you back afterwards.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. So I think, Mr. Chair, to your point, as you said, this is not something we're going to do twice. And, Dan, if I understood you correctly, it sounds like, the issue with this left turn lane, it's not a question of if, it's a question of when and to what extent. So again, in view of that, and Mr. Chair, in addition to the study, the applicant is also making a contribution here with the understanding, I think that would, go towards this more significant improvement that Dan was describing down the line. So I tend to agree with Mr. Chair. I don't think, even if we had the study in front of us, that we'd be saying, we are going to ask the applicant to make some improvement in the roadway right now. This is a longer term, larger scale project. So I think with that in mind, I tend to agree with you that I wouldn't view it as, something we would, table this for to get the results in that instance.
Mr. Bollinger? Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to thank Mr. Hudson for his comments, and I appreciate his position. And I guess my only final question on the matter would be, my arithmetic might be a little off here, but it looks like the applicant is willing to make, in essence, a $4,000 contribution for a traffic counting camera, and then they're making an additional $33,600 contribution for future improvements. That adds up to almost $38,000 plus. They're going to undertake the actual study. So I guess my last question to Mr. Hudson or to the board in general is, do you feel that that's sufficient given the relative impact of this development? So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, I'll just try to address that, but yeah, I think it is. I mean, it's hard to know exactly what that project will cost or what it will entail. But proportionally, we've the numbers were based on the $200 per trip, which we've used everywhere in the city to contribute towards quarter. Here we have a specific project, so it's not like money for stuff that's far in the future. I hope this will come to fruition sooner. But yeah, we use that as a basis, $200 per trip, which we've applied elsewhere, and in lieu of anything different, we feel that's appropriate.
Yeah, I'd probably add, probably Mr. Varley can chime in. We've both been on the board for a while. I'm trying to think of another site of this size that had a contribution in this magnitude. I'm struggling to actually think of one. Is that accurate, Varley?
Yeah, I would agree. This is certainly one of the larger ones that I've seen since I've been on the board.
Okay. Mr. Peterson, I saw your hand there a couple times.
Yes. Many times heading south on DW highways, particularly during holiday season, everyone's going to Best Buy, and that traffic can get backed up a long ways. And I think if we extend the left, or we improve the left turn lane at this location, paid for by BJ's, would benefit the entire neighborhood come holiday time, because that's when it gets all backed up. So if the study shows that the lane improvement needs to be done, I think that would generally help out the entire neighborhood. Thank you.
Okay. Other comments by the board? Questions?
I'm
seeing-
sorry, Mr. Chairman. What was that?
I was asking the board, yeah. if
Oh,
they- That's okay. Okay, I'm seeing none. Does anybody on the board want to make a motion to this application? I would remind everyone there are 3 waivers that need a decision. That item number 6 should be dated June 12th. And the stipulations, item number 7 would be what date was that one, Linda?
18th.
The 18th?
18th.
Okay. And then I would remind people that Mr. Weber did indicate something about a sort of an in situ test of the drainage at the curb cut for Adventure Way with a report, if that's something anybody is interested with. So there's
Yeah.
a couple of things I heard.
Yeah. I'm all set with them. They said they were gonna do it, I think.
Yeah.
Between now and then, it's gonna rain, so.
Mr. Bollinger?
Oh, yes, Mr. Chair, I was just gonna say, I would support Mr. Weber's, if it's a formal motion, if we wanted to add, condition number 12, that there be at least a visual drainage test, but I'll leave it up to Mr. Weber, whether he wants to, I guess, formally put that forward, but I would support that.
So I'd ask again, is anybody willing to make a motion? Mr. Weber?
I'm just writing the rest of it. Okay. New business number 1, site plan, Apple Tree Properties LLC, applicant BJ's Wholesale Club at 210 Daniel Webster Highway and 101 Adventure Way. Finding that the plan meets NRO 190, 146D, and 190, 23 Echo E, with 3 waivers. The first waiver, NRO 190, 26-1H2, which requires maximum front back setway, is granted, and that the waiver will not be contrary to the spirit and intent of the regulation. Number 2, request for waiver NRO 190-89A, which requires light level not to exceed 0.2 foot candles at property lines, is granted, and finding the waiver will not be contrary to the spirit and intent of the regulation. Number 3, the request for waiver NRO 190-89C, which requires any luminary with a lamp rated more than 1800 should be mounted using formula where D is the distance to the property line with a pole height not exceeding 25 feet, is granted, finding that the waiver will not be contrary to the spirit and intent of the regulation. 4 through 5 as written. 6, changing the date to June 12th, 2020. Number 7, changing the date to June 18th, 2020. 8 through 11 as written, and 12, the applicant will do a visual stormwater test to the catch basins, so it does not go onto the street.
Okay, so we have that motion to approve with the stipulations as indicated by Mr. Weber. Do we have a second on that? Second by Mr. Bollinger.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any further discussion of the board? Okay, seeing none, Linda, can I have a roll vote on it, please?
Mike Peterson,
Yes.
Scott Leclaire,
Yes.
Adam Varley,
Yes.
Ed Weber,
Yes.
Jan Schmidt,
Yes.
Dan Hudson,
Yes.
Bob Ballinger,
Yes.
Larry Hirsch,
Yes.
and that motion passes 8-0.
Okay, thank you, everybody. I appreciate all your inputs and questions. All right, moving on with the agenda. Other business, case number one, review, or excuse me, other business number one, review of tentative agenda to determine proposals of regional impact. So we have a technical review meeting, June 8th, 2020. Agenda here in front of us. Does anybody have a chance to take a look at it and want to make a motion as to whether or not there are any proposals of regional impact?
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead, Mr. Bollinger.
I'd like to make a motion that there are no projects of regional impact. However, I do appreciate Mr. Weber keeping tabs on the Green Meadow development in Hudson, but I think as presented to us in our packet, there is nothing of concern for this evening's meeting. So.
All right, thank you, Mr. Bollinger. So we have that motion. If there are no proposals of regional impact, do we have a second on that?
I will second.
Second by Mr. Varley. Any further discussion? Can I get a roll vote on that, please, Linda?
Mike Peterson,
Yes.
Scott Leclaire,
Yes.
Adam Barley. Adam Barley, you're on mute.
Yes.
Ed Weber,
Yes.
Dan Schmidt,
Yes.
Dan Hudson,
Yes.
Bob Ballinger,
Yes.
and Larry Hirsch,
Yes.
and that motion passes 8-0.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Next item for other business, we have a referral from Board of Aldermen on proposed O-20-023 relative to advertising signage on umbrellas, awnings, and canopies in connections with outdoor dining. So, Linda, were you gonna present that, or is anybody else?
I don't think anybody's here, so I can speak to it.
Sure.
I'm actually part of the outdoor dining committee, and as you know, downtown has expanded its outdoor dining. Down there, it's actually really amazing. So this ordinance that they're proposing, what it will do is right now, you can't have umbrellas with advertising and signs on it. So what this ordinance will do is allow umbrellas, canopies, and awnings to have a signage on it. The only thing it won't be allowed to do is it's not going to be allowed to block any vehicle or pedestrian traffic. So that's the whole purpose, just to allow umbrellas and awnings and with some signage on it.
Okay, Mr. Weber.
Is this a temporary one that's gonna change and it's only for this time frame, or is this going forward? That's all it's gonna be. That's what it is.
You know, I'm reading it right now. The ordinance is written. It doesn't give an end date, but I'm assuming it's probably going to go with the outdoor dining, expanded dining, because it's actually, in the street and over the sidewalk. So I'm sure once, if that goes away, then we'll take a look at this again.
Thank you.
Other questions, comments? So what we'd be looking for here is either a positive or negative referral to the Board of Aldermen, or a referral with some further recommendations. Does anybody want to make a motion?
Webber, I'll make a motion.
Weber, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll make a favorable promotion for the, let's see, amended 0-20-023. A favorable recommendation.
All right, so we have a motion to provide a favorable recommendation of O-20-023 to the Board of Aldermen. Do we have a second on that?
Second.
Second by Mr. Bollinger. Any further discussion on that? Can we get a roll vote on that, please?
Mike Peterson,
Yes, recommended.
Scott Leclaire, Adam Worley,
Yes.
Ed Weber,
Yes.
Jen Schmidt,
Yes.
Dan Hudson,
Yes.
Bob Ballinger,
Yes.
and Larry Hirsch.
Yes.
And that motion passes 8-0.
Okay, thank you. So that's the last item we have on our formal agenda. Is there any discussion items for anybody from the board? Mr.
Weber.
Weber?
Yes, I didn't want to discuss it in the report because this is something extra. The Nashua Regional Planning Commission is requesting applicants to serve on the board. You don't have, I don't think that you have to be a member. I think that they're just looking for people that are around in the planning department and things like that, but they're looking for full-time officers. So if you're looking to do that, give them a call.
Okay. Good. Any other discussion items? Hearing none. Anybody want to make a motion to adjourn?
Everybody wants to stay around.
Mr. Hirsch?
I move we adjourn.
All right, so we have a motion to adjourn by Mr. Hirsch. Can we get a roll vote on that, please?
Mike Peterson,
Yes.
Scott Leclerc,
Yes.
Adam Varley,
Yes.
Ed Weber,
Yes.
Dan Schmidt,
Yes.
Dan Hudson,
Yes.
Bob Ballinger,
Yes.
and Larry Hirsch.
Yes.
And that motion passes 8-0.
All right, and we are adjourned at 8:51. Thank you.